Let's bring in Jim Trusty, former Justice Department prosecutor and former attorney for President Trump. Jim, this feels like a very open and shut case. This guy came from Washington State all the way here to D.C. He clearly ambushed these two National Guard troops that were wearing their uniforms. It feels like there is malice, there's intent, but there's a lot of talk now about mental health issues and the president himself wondering if this guy went cuckoo before he did this. How could this hurt a case that Jeanine Pirro is trying to put forward, or how could it complicate this if he's found to be mentally unfit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll complicate, but that's very different than really hurting the case. I mean, look, right now we've got charges that are in the Superior Court for D.C., the local side of the federal prosecution, and that's going to change. I would tell you, my guess is probably 95% that we're going to see federal charges swapped in here. For one thing, the Superior Court side does not allow for pursuit of the death penalty. And I think what we're hearing from the Department of Justice and from the U.S. Attorney is a pretty clear cry for seeking the death penalty in this case. So I think you're going to see an evolution of charges over coming days. Maybe we still start in Superior Court. That buys the FBI time to develop more information about motive evidence. And, you know, motive and premeditation, the facts that connect to those are the most powerful facts to knock down a mental health defense. Okay. So when somebody says that they're crazy or they have PTSD or they have some sort of, disturbance in their life that caused this rupture from normality, that stuff usually gets overcome by pure facts, that a guy drove from Washington State with a 357 to ambush people in the middle of the day. So, it makes for a long contested penalty phase in a death penalty trial someday, where all of this stuff about Afghanistan is probably going to play out. But I don't think it's going to change the charging decisions, which are going to elevate to a federal case with death eligibility in the near future.
Well, you're right. They definitely want to go after the death penalty. This is Attorney General Pam Bondi talking about that yesterday on Fox and Friends. Listen.
It's going to depend on what happens to them. Again, we're praying for a recovery for them. But worst case scenario, minimum life in prison with terrorism charges. We're doing everything we can as fast as we can. ATF has been involved analyzing the gun. They're moving at light speed to make sure justice is served.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
For years, many Americans assumed the Arizona border was fortified, monitored, and nearly impossible to breach. But that belief collapsed the moment federal agents made a discovery that stunned even the most seasoned officers. Beneath the quiet layers of desert soil, investigators found 5 highly engineered tunnels stretching directly from Mexico into the United States. These are nothing like the crude holes smugglers usually dig. Each passage was reinforced with poured concrete, fitted with electrical lighting, and equipped with ventilation systems. Some sections even had small rail tracks designed to move heavy loads quickly and silently below ground, almost like miniature subway lines built in complete secrecy. At the end of each tunnel, agents uncovered 62 massive storage containers. The moment they were opened, the scale of the operation became clear. Inside were enormous quantities of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and stacks of bundled cash carefully wrapped for transport. Every shipment carried the unmistakable markings of the CJ&G cartel, one of the most violent and sophisticated criminal organizations in North America. Yet the most shocking discovery wasn't the drugs. It was the paperwork hidden among them. Financial ledgers revealed that several U.S. Border Patrol officers had accepted nearly $480,000 in bribes in only 3 months. Those payments weren't random. They were calculated investments made to guarantee that cartel shipments passed through inspection points without being questioned or searched. For many investigators, this was the clearest sign yet that organized crime had penetrated deeply into America's security structure. What started as a routine discovery rapidly escalated into a full-scale federal emergency. Multiple agencies, including HSI, DEA, and the FBI, launched a combined investigation. What they uncovered next would expose one of the most advanced criminal pipelines ever discovered in the desert. as federal investigators dug deeper into the evidence. They quickly realized the 5 tunnels were only the entry points to a far larger machine. What followed was the uncovering of a trafficking network operating across multiple states, a system engineered to move massive quantities of narcotics deep into the United States with military-level precision. Through seized phones, encrypted messages, and hidden financial ledgers, agents began to map the true scale of the operation. The CJ&G cartel had quietly built a monthly pipeline capable of moving nearly 2.4 tons of drugs from Mexico into Arizona before routing shipments to Phoenix, Chicago, and Detroit. This wasn't a network that relied on luck or improvisation. It relied on strategy, corruption, and the careful targeting of insiders positioned in high-value locations. One of the largest breakthroughs came at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Investigators discovered that 5 cargo handling employees had been secretly paid to switch container labels. A simple 6-second action that allowed cartel shipments to disguise themselves as medical supplies or priority cargo. That small change let them bypass multiple layers of security and move directly into the outbound trucking lanes without raising suspicion. Behind the scenes, each of these employees received tens of thousands of dollars every week. The payments were funneled through layered bank accounts, shell companies, and untraceable digital transfers. But investigators soon learned the corruption wasn't born from greed alone. Many of the workers were struggling, some with heavy debt, others with serious family medical expenses. The cartel identified these weaknesses long before approaching them. Once the first payment was accepted, the workers were trapped, afraid to refuse further involvement. As agents pieced together the puzzle, one name appeared repeatedly in encrypted chats, surveillance photos, and financial logs: El Arquitecto. He was believed to be the mask. By the time investigators connected all the evidence, the engineered tunnels, the 2.4-ton monthly pipeline, the corrupted airport staff, and the shadowy figure known as El Arquitecto, federal leadership reached a sobering conclusion. Arizona was facing the largest cartel infiltration in its recorded history. The danger was no longer limited to remote border regions. It had spread into airports, trucking hubs, warehouses, and even law enforcement agencies themselves. If the network wasn't dismantled immediately, thousands of pounds of fentanyl and methamphetamine would continue pouring into American cities every single month. At 4:03 a.m., after weeks of planning inside a fortified command center, the United States launched what would become the most extensive raid ever carried out in the state, Operation Desert Citadel. A total of 3,200 federal and state agents, FBI, DEA, ICE, HSI, CBP, U.S. Marshals, and specialized tactical units were deployed simultaneously across Arizona. Their mission: strike 147 cartel-linked locations within minutes to prevent the suspects from warning each other or destroying evidence. As the operation began, the quiet desert night erupted. Black Hawk helicopters swept over Phoenix and Tucson, circling above neighborhoods where high-level cartel organizers lived undercover. Armored vehicles rolled through residential streets, their engines echoing off the walls. Elite SWAT teams stacked at doorways, waiting for the synchronized go signal. When a radio command finally came, dozens of steel rams slammed into reinforced doors at the exact same second across the state, creating a massive wave of sound that reverberated through Arizona. Inside stash houses, chaos unfolded instantly. Some cartel operatives were jolted awake by flashbang grenades detonating in their rooms. Others tried escaping through rooftops or back alleys, only to find Federal K-9 teams and drones cutting off every route. In a warehouse outside Mesa, agents breached a fortify. When the dust from Operation Desert Citadel finally began to settle, federal analysts turned their attention to the most disturbing discovery of all: how deeply the CJ&G network had embedded itself inside American systems. The tunnels, drugs, and arrests were visible, but the real threat had been operating silently, a layer of targeted corruption designed to blend the cartel's operations into everyday infrastructure. As thousands of seized devices were processed, investigators uncovered a chilling pattern. The cartel had studied U.S. institutions like an engineer studies a blueprint, mapping weaknesses, examining employee histories, and identifying individuals facing personal or financial strain. Their approach was methodical and patient, far more strategic than anything seen in Arizona for decades. It began at the border. Documents recovered from the tunnels revealed detailed payment logs showing transfers of $40,000 to $70,000 every 2 weeks. These payments weren't random bribes. They were scheduled installments delivered through encrypted banking apps. The officers receiving them weren't chosen by chance. Months earlier, cartel scouts had reviewed their backgrounds, noting debts, foreclosures, and expensive medical obligations. They approached them not with threats, but with sympathy, offering the promise of temporary financial relief. Once the first payment was accepted, the trap closed. Within 3 months, some officers had quietly collected nearly $400.
Like you said, it is a federal district, so they can do this, even though D.C. banned the death penalty a long time ago. Is it advisable to pursue the death penalty?
Well, I mean, look, that's a very difficult decision that people have to make for themselves. But I would tell you, I was on the Attorney General's Capital Review Committee for many years when I was a federal prosecutor. And, my view was, short of some sort of religious or philosophical opposition to the death penalty, there are times where the case cries out for it. Boston Marathon bomber, Charleston church shooter, Pittsburgh synagogue. There's a lot of examples in my book of ones where it's such a heinous crime that it makes sense that if we have this on the books, prosecutors should pursue it. So I think you're going to see something like a charge, Section 1114 of the Title 18, which is essentially targeting armed services members because of who they are. I think that's going to probably fly. There may be some other terrorism type charges. There'll certainly be accompanying firearm charges. And I think you'll probably see a death penalty case. Now, maybe the mental health story, the mitigation will be more powerful than we're giving credit at this point. That's a long road to really be able to assess that. But I think it's probably the type of case this administration's going to put their foot down and say we have to seek.
Yeah. Hopefully he talks. Hopefully he is cooperative and we can find out what he was thinking, what this motive was. I think there's a lot of people that need to know what happened here. Jim, always good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Sure, you too. Good to see you, Aisha.
$80,000. A similar pattern emerged at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. The 5 cargo handlers at the center of the scheme had no criminal histories. Some were middle-aged fathers supporting families. One had a daughter fighting leukemia. The cartel didn't exploit greed. They exploited desperation. Payments were disguised as consulting fees from shell logistics companies. Co-workers never questioned the sudden home renovations or newer vehicles because the employees remained punctual, quiet, and trustworthy. The type of P. As news of Operation Desert Citadel spread across Arizona, the public reaction was immediate, emotional, and overwhelming. For years, communities had sensed that something was wrong. Strange traffic on quiet rural roads, abandoned homes with constant activity, unexplained surges in overdoses. But few ever imagined the true scale of what had been happening beneath their feet and inside their own cities. The revelation of 5 reinforced tunnels, corrupted officers, airport infiltration, and more than 5,500 arrests sent shockwaves through towns both large and small. In Phoenix, residents gathered outside precincts trying to understand how a multinational criminal network had moved so freely across their neighborhoods. Many families who had lost loved ones to fentanyl felt a painful sense of validation. The crisis they had long warned about wasn't fueled by random street dealers. It was fueled by a billion-dollar supply chain engineered for speed, profit, and destruction. Some stood silently holding photos of sons, daughters, and siblings who had overdosed, reminders that this crisis was not abstract. It was deeply personal. In smaller communities like Yuma, Nogales, and Casa Grande, anger mixed with fear. Town meetings filled with residents demanding answers. How had Border Patrol officers been compromised so easily? Why had airport workers operated under the radar? And how had federal agencies uncovered what local authorities had failed to detect for years? The infiltration forced people to question the safety of schools located near trucking routes. the legitimacy of cargo moving through local warehouses, and the security of neighborhoods they once considered peaceful. The social consequences rippled everywhere. Overdose numbers, already severe, were re-examined under a new light. State officials revealed a staggering statistic. Before the takedown, Arizona's fentanyl-related deaths had surged by 380% in just 2 years. The connection was undeniable. The cart. In the weeks following Operation Desert Citadel, federal agencies faced a new and equally difficult mission: rebuilding Arizona's security systems and restoring public confidence after the most extensive infiltration in the state's history. Although the raids had dismantled the cartel's core operations, investigators knew that the vulnerabilities exploited by El Arquitecto still existed. The damage wasn't just physical, it was structural. If those weaknesses weren't addressed, another network could rise to replace the one that had just been taken down. To begin the recovery, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice created the Arizona Redeployment Task Group. Its mission was straightforward but overwhelming: redesign the state's security protocols from the ground up and ensure that nothing like this infiltration could ever happen again. More than 900 additional Border Patrol agents were reassigned to Arizona, supported by rapid response units trained specifically for tunnel detection and subterranean operations. These specialized teams deployed seismic sensors, fiber optic systems, and thermal mapping drones to monitor high-risk stretches of the desert. The federal government also approved the installation of 2,400 infrared cameras across critical border sectors, allowing real-time monitoring of nighttime movement. At the same time, CBP underwent a full internal audit, reviewing finances, lifestyle changes, and unexplained income among its personnel. It was an uncomfortable but necessary process, designed to identify any remaining compromised officers who might still be connected to cartel activity. Airports across the state introduced sweeping reforms. At Phoenix Sky Harbor, officials replaced the old cargo system with a new biometric tracking platform that used encrypted digital labels incapable of being swapped or duplicated without triggering automatic federal alerts. Cargo crews were rotated more frequently, and all employees with ACI. Single Insider exists for one reason: to expose the hidden machinery operating beneath the surface of everyday life. This is the place where shadows are dissected, systems are unraveled, and the truth, no matter how buried, finds a way to the light. In an age where information is twisted, diluted, and manipulated, Single Insider steps past the noise and goes directly to the real engine room of crime, corruption, covert deals, and institutional failure. This channel does not tell ordinary stories. It reconstructs the kind of operations that powerful people prefer to keep buried. Every investigation crafted here follows a single principle: nothing happens without a network supporting it. A cartel shipment does not move without an insider. A corrupt officer does not rise without protection. A region does not collapse without warning signs. Single Insider follows these threads with precision, uncovering how one decision, one loophole, or one compromised official can trigger a domino effect capable of destabilizing entire communities. This channel specializes in deep dive breakdowns of criminal networks, financial corruption, hidden pipelines, and systemic failures that shape real-world outcomes. Whether the story begins at a quiet seaport, a busy border crossing, a corrupt management office, or a failed political decision, Single Insider shows the entire chain of events, every link, every player, every consequence. The channel goes beyond headlines, beyond rumors, and far beyond the shallow surface-level information most audiences are used to consuming. Single Insider builds narratives out of real patterns, real evidence, and real-world logic. These are not fictional stories. These are reconstructions of operations that operate in silence while the world sleeps. Operations that attach themselves to weak institutions, broken leadership, blind trust, and the vulnerabilities that criminals exploit with surgical accuracy.